Every time life shakes, it isn't to break you, it's to reveal just how unshakable you've become. What just unfolded around your name wasn't chaos by accident, it was the natural eruption that happens when light refuses to be hidden. The universe has been stirring the air, and those who once whispered in corners suddenly found themselves shouting in the open. The attempt to cage your essence has finally split apart, and those who once clung to false stories are realizing the weight of their illusions. Their carefully built image cracked, not because you fought back, but because truth eventually pierces through like sunlight breaking a locked room. What they built on sand has been washed away by tides they never saw coming. The most astonishing part? The voice that rose for you wasn't expected, it came from the very circle that once seemed closed. Loyalty shifted, and words carried with conviction cut deeper than any weapon. The scene was fierce, raw, unstoppable. Energy that had been suppressed for too long burst forward, and no one could silence it. This was never random. Every ripple in your journey was already aligning for this very unveiling. While you turned inward, healing and strengthening, the unseen threads of destiny were weaving the moment that your honor would be defended without you lifting a finger. It was written into the pattern the second you chose self-respect over pleasing the noise. What appeared as an argument was in truth a mirror of justice, cosmic balance stepping onto the stage. It was more than people disagreeing, it was life announcing loudly that falsehood cannot keep its crown forever. And in that instant, the mask slipped and clarity blazed. Don't underestimate what this symbolizes. This isn't just about reputation or defense, it's confirmation that every step of your evolution has been silently preparing the stage for vindication. The clash was loud, yes, but behind the noise there's harmony forming, a reminder that you are supported in ways you can't always see. The lesson. Your decision to cut ties with what drained you set this avalanche into motion. The firestorm wasn't punishment, it was proof. You rose higher, and the weight of dishonesty simply couldn't survive the altitude. What you just witnessed is not drama, it's destiny showing its hand, reminding you that no lie can overshadow the radiance of truth. People who shine without apology often stir shadows in others, and that is exactly why your presence rattled the comfort of someone who thrived on illusions. They convinced themselves that being surrounded by agreeable voices was enough to shield their fragile pride. In their story, they were the noble soul wronged, while you were cast as the antagonist daring to walk away. Yet what they could not see is that nothing spoken in secrecy stays hidden forever. Life itself holds a ledger, and every deception finds its place upon the page. Without you ever lifting a hand in vengeance, every false tale, every twisting of the truth, every sly attempt to sabotage you was quietly noted by forces far larger than either of you. Revelation, not revenge, was the endgame all along. They believed themselves to be the steady one, the model of stability, while painting you as chaotic, ungrounded, and unworthy. In their narrative, they wore the mask of wisdom and maturity, presenting themselves as if they had earned their security without help. But masks cannot endure when the light of truth grows too bright. Behind that mask lay a dependency they could never admit. They had been siphoning vitality from your presence, using your creativity, your influence, and your very spark to sustain the image they displayed to others. The moment you chose to distance yourself, their scaffolding weakened, and what they thought was indestructible began to falter. Deprived of what they once drew from you, they spiraled into panic. That panic birthed louder accusations, more desperate stories, and sharper words designed to strike at your essence. But the real turning point came when you enacted a separation so profound it cut through invisible chains, the kind of severing that ends an era entirely. Whether by conscious ritual or by sheer decision to reclaim your peace, you detached from the cords that had bound you. And when that link dissolved, so too did their illusion of control. Their reality, once supported by your energy, began to collapse inwards, leaving them exposed and frantic. What followed was their final gamble, a storm of slander aimed at staining your name. Yet truth has a strange gravity, always pulling itself upward until it breaks the surface. The stories thrown against you slipped away because they could not cling to someone anchored in authenticity. And as their accusations were examined, it was not their claims that stood, but your consistent growth and undeniable impact that shone through, leaving no doubt about where the real strength resided. Those who try to discredit others often forget that their own words and actions reveal far more than they intend. In their attempts to prove you flawed, they displayed their own instability, speaking with contradiction, exaggeration, and anger that had nothing to do with fairness. The more they insisted on tearing you down, the more they revealed the very qualities they tried to pin on you. Every step they took in their campaign to undermine you only pulled them further into a pit of their own making. The more they spoke, the more transparent their resentment became. Instead of convincing others, they highlighted their own fixation and inability to release the past. What they thought would be your undoing became evidence of their inner turmoil. When your presence was no longer fueling their sense of identity, the emptiness they carried became impossible to hide. The absence of your energy acted like a spotlight, illuminating everything they had buried. Someone close to them, once sympathetic, perhaps even protective, began to see the cracks. This ally had listened for years to their grievances, and something began to shift in their perception. The supporter, who once tolerated the endless complaints, noticed a disturbing pattern. The accusations were not occasional remarks but the center of nearly every conversation. Gatherings that should have brought comfort or connection became repetitive monologues of envy. What began as minor criticisms transformed into a constant obsession, overshadowing all else. Their fixation became so consuming that it spilled into everyday life. They spent hours monitoring, analyzing, and speculating about your choices, searching for flaws that weren't there. This compulsive behavior started to affect those within their environment, and the people who once ignored the bitterness could no longer deny its corrosive effect. The impact on the youngest around them was undeniable. Innocent hearts, exposed to this constant tension, began showing signs of fear and confusion. The atmosphere at home grew heavy, not because of your actions, but because of the relentless fixation on you. Children, unable to process such hostility, absorbed the unease, leaving visible marks on their sense of safety. It became clear to those watching closely that this wasn't healing, nor was it a genuine attempt to address hurt. It was something darker, an addiction to the identity of being wronged. The need to cling to the role of the victim overshadowed their relationships, their peace, and even their responsibility to those they cared for. What they thought was power was in truth a self-destructive cycle, consuming everything around them while convincing them they were somehow winning. Some people shaped their entire existence around the idea that they were betrayed, because that identity feels safer than confronting their own stagnation. For your detractor, this became the foundation of their self-image. The lone truth-teller, the misunderstood soul, the one who claimed to see the real you behind closed doors. In their mind, the role of martyr gave them meaning they couldn't create within themselves. When that illusion cracked, they faced the terrifying possibility that perhaps you weren't their villain at all, that perhaps they had trapped themselves in cycles they refused to break. Instead of turning inward, they clung to bitterness. While your path kept rising, they poured their time into dissecting your life, monitoring your progress, and fixating on every choice you made. Their focus wasn't growth, it was surveillance. From there, the obsession grew into fabrications. They spun elaborate stories, weaving conspiracies about how your achievements couldn't possibly be real. It escalated to desperate measures, crossing lines that should never have been crossed. False accusations were thrown into official channels, lies stretched so far that even their own allies began to waver. At first, the exposure was subtle. A conversation that began calmly took a sharp turn once undeniable truths entered the space. The person closest to them, who had quietly absorbed their bitterness for years, began piecing together a bigger picture. They realized that this relentless fixation wasn't an occasional vent, it had consumed every part of their loved one's world. When confronted, your detractor couldn't face it. Instead of pausing, they launched into full resistance mode, clinging to their script of being the wronged party. They insisted you were to blame for everything, even suggesting that anyone who questioned them was being deceived by you. The desperation was obvious, and it left no room for reason. But the patience of their defender had limits. After watching years of distortion, they could no longer remain silent. The restraint snapped, and the truth rushed out with unfiltered force. Every exaggerated tale was dismantled, every manipulation exposed, every detail of the false narrative dragged into the light. What became clear in that moment was that envy, not genuine harm, had fueled the attacks all along. The lies had been rooted in resentment of your growth, not in reality. And once those around them recognized the depth of the obsession, the cycle of enabling ended. No one was willing to sacrifice peace any longer for someone who preferred clinging to bitterness instead of building their own future. Some people unravel the moment the mirror is turned back on them, and that is why the clash grew so intense. When confronted with undeniable proof of their actions, they couldn't bear to see the carefully woven disguise ripped apart. The one who had stood silently in the background had been quietly observing, gathering undeniable traces of the pattern, notes of shifting stories, records of contradictions, and examples of how their moods rose and fell entirely in reaction to your progress. It became impossible to ignore how drastically they would change whenever your life was mentioned. The atmosphere darkened instantly, and the shift in their demeanor revealed just how deeply jealousy had hollowed them out. They weren't simply irritated, they transformed into a shadow of themselves, consumed entirely by resentment that they could no longer hide. The confrontation reached its sharpest point when the defender presented a sequence of events too precise to dismiss. Piece by piece, they revealed how this person had abandoned their ambitions, distanced themselves from friends, and neglected the people closest to them. All of it had been sacrificed for the sole purpose of fueling an obsession with tearing you down, even though you had long since chosen peace and moved on. The line that shattered their defenses came like a blade of truth. This anger isn't about what was lost, it's about the fact that they're flourishing without you. That sentence cut deeper than any accusation because it dismantled the illusion completely. It revealed that the core of their rage wasn't betrayal, but the inability to accept your joy. Evidence also surfaced showing you had once extended olive branches, attempts to mend the cracks with conversations, compromises, even suggestions for guidance and healing. Those gestures had been refused every time. Instead of choosing reconciliation, they chose escalation. They preferred stirring turmoil over doing the inner work required for genuine peace. Then came the final strike of truth, a statement that reframed everything with undeniable clarity. They weren't a foundation in your life, they were a season that had to end so you could grow. That perspective shifted the narrative entirely, turning what they thought was abandonment into a story of transformation and necessary closure. In that moment, it became clear that your path had always been about evolution, while theirs had been about clinging to repetition. The confrontation exposed the futility of their battle. It was never truly with you, but with their refusal to move forward. And once that realization sank in, the truth could no longer be denied. The war they waged was already lost before it even began. Some battles never touch you because they no longer belong to the world you inhabit. Their anger, their attempts to paint you in shadows, their constant effort to undo your progress, it all failed for one simple reason. You were no longer standing on the ground where their arrows could reach. You rose into a different rhythm of life, one where their judgments held no weight. When the clash reached its highest point, the one who defended you drew a line that could not be ignored. They highlighted the undeniable contrast. While your detractor was exhausting themselves trying to dismantle your path, you were busy planting seeds of creation. While they lingered in resentment, you were walking into possibility. While they sowed bitterness, you were cultivating brilliance. The difference was so unmistakable that even those who wanted to believe otherwise could no longer deny it. And in that moment, the defender was more than a voice, they became a shield. They refused to allow deception to stand unchallenged, refusing to let your character be dismantled in silence. Their role became larger than personal loyalty, it turned into something sacred. They were the vessel through which justice flowed, their words tearing apart illusions that had kept others bound in confusion. That confrontation shattered the spell of lies, and its echo shook the very ground beneath your detractor's life. The bond between them and their ally fractured so deeply that nothing could repair it. As the dust settled, questions began to spread. Others in their circle started re-examining the stories they had swallowed, wondering how much of it was truth and how much was carefully spun fantasy. In contrast, your world began to expand. Doors that once seemed distant started swinging open, and opportunities began arriving with a rhythm that felt unstoppable. Recognition began flowing toward you, not because you chased it, but because your authenticity drew it in. Communities that celebrate sincerity and vision are welcoming you, and your presence is being acknowledged as a gift. What seems like coincidence is in fact alignment, life answering the frequency you chose to embody. This is the law of elevation. When you refuse to be pulled into cycles of venom, when you hold your ground in integrity, when you choose growth instead of reaction, life itself lifts you higher. Their noise fades not because it stops, but because you've ascended to a level where it can no longer follow. Some lives contract when they refuse growth, while others expand because they embrace it. The contrast has never been clearer. One path marked by isolation, lost trust, and constant turmoil, and the other filled with fresh recognition, new opportunities, and a sense of deep fulfillment. Even those who once questioned you can no longer deny what's unfolding before their eyes. The subject of resources has been especially revealing. For them, financial stability has always been tangled with fear and struggle, while for you, it has become a natural extension of honoring your true gifts. You've discovered ways to create prosperity that flow in harmony with who you are, work that revitalizes you instead of draining you. This shift has multiplied possibilities in your life, while their choices have left them repeating unstable cycles. The difference lies in mindset. Their focus has been on extracting what they can from others, holding tightly to the belief that life is a limited pie where someone's gain is their loss. You, on the other hand, approach from contribution, knowing there is more than enough, and that creating value for others amplifies your own success. This divergence has created a distance between your worlds that grows wider with each passing day. Instead of channeling energy into their own path, they've spent it monitoring yours. That fixation has robbed them of time they could have invested in their own growth. Meanwhile, your inner development has become visible to everyone who encounters you. They comment on the calm in your presence, the way you draw positivity without force, the way opportunities seem to meet you halfway. This is more than progress, it's transformation at the deepest level. Such growth changes the very essence of how you move through the world. Doors that once seemed unreachable now open easily, because your character has proven itself. The universe hands you responsibility because it recognizes you will use it well. Watching this unfold unsettles your detractor deeply. It shows them that change is not only possible, but unavoidable for those willing to evolve. Every milestone you reach serves as a mirror to their resistance. Each time you rise higher, their choice to remain stagnant becomes harder to justify. The peace you embody exposes the turbulence they continue to live in, and yet you haven't needed to argue, defend, or explain. The truth speaks through your results. Attempts to stain your name have only exposed their intent. Whenever lies were examined, they fell apart, leaving only evidence of your integrity. Official matters tipped in your favor not because of strategy, but because clarity emerged when reality was faced. Their efforts revealed them, not you. And the one who once defended them didn't just uncover deception, they dismantled it, making sure nothing could hide in the shadows any longer. When truth is revealed, it often comes in the form of a reflection no one can deny. What unfolded forced everyone to see who this person truly became when they thought the world wasn't looking. They had convinced themselves they were the center of the story, the brave figure battling against injustice, yet the reality unveiled them as someone orbiting a life they could no longer touch. What emerged instead was clarity. Their role was never what they imagined. They weren't the hero of your downfall but a side character in your evolution, someone whose actions sharpened your awareness, whose negativity propelled your growth, whose attempts at sabotage only magnified your brilliance. In trying to dim you, they unknowingly lit you up. The clash that erupted wasn't simply about protecting your reputation. It marked the end of an era where your light was misinterpreted. You stepped into a space where your value could no longer be questioned, where your presence is acknowledged without explanation, where your worth is self-evident to all who encounter it. The irony of their fixation is profound. Every effort to erase you became an act of recognition. Every false story demanded that they think of you. Each attempt to discredit your name required them to study your journey. They turned their attention into a shrine of obsession, dedicating their energy to your existence without realizing it. But beneath the surface, your defender uncovered something deeper: patterns of unhealthy surveillance that moved far beyond casual curiosity. Hidden accounts, alternative devices, and secret alliances were used to watch from the shadows. They weren't merely looking, they were dissecting, charting, and cataloging your every move as if unraveling a mystery that existed only in their imagination. Such behavior consumed them. Time that could have been invested in personal healing or creation was spent following your path step by step, leaving them drained and bitter. Their life became a mirror of yours, except instead of building, they chose to linger as a bystander, resenting the joy they refused to create for themselves. This dynamic revealed itself as a parasitic connection, one that tried to feed on your progress to compensate for their lack. But once you severed that invisible link, everything shifted. The energy they depended on was gone, and without it, their carefully maintained image collapsed instantly. What they believed sustained them was never theirs to begin with, and the loss left them exposed in a way no mask could cover. When someone builds their identity on draining others, the silence that follows separation forces them to confront a void they can't escape. No energy to siphon, no life to criticize, no joy to tarnish, only the reflection of their own unfulfilled choices. The weight of that emptiness has not just impacted them, it has spilled into the environment around them, pulling even the youngest hearts into a conflict they never asked to be part of. The most tragic part is that innocent souls became unwilling witnesses to bitterness they could not comprehend. The ones closest to the situation have watched children absorb the tension, hearing raised voices and confusing narratives tied to a name they don't truly understand. To them, the world should have been about safety and love, yet instead, they've been caught in a storm of envy and fixation. The imagery is painful. Little ones withdrawing to corners, clinging to toys for reassurance, retreating into silence while the adults around them unravel in resentment. Their unspoken questions hang heavy in the air. Why is energy being wasted on someone absent, while those who are present beg for warmth and guidance? These moments have become impossible to ignore, pushing your defender to finally break their silence. They came to realize that neutrality was no longer harmless, it was complicit. Remaining quiet didn't just allow toxicity toward you, it perpetuated an environment of fear for those who should have been shielded from it. Watching innocence get chipped away in real time became the turning point. Protecting truth wasn't only about clearing your name, it was about protecting the minds and hearts that deserved better. At the same time, another thread has been weaving through your life, one of guidance and preparation. Insights, synchronicities, and spiritual nudges have been arriving with increasing clarity, signaling that new opportunities and abundance are lining up in your favor. The focus of this guidance isn't about proving worthiness, that's already been established through your consistency. Instead, it's about equipping you to carry the weight of blessings with wisdom. A very specific caution has been given: abundance without discipline can unravel even the strongest character. Examples abound of people who gained everything outwardly but lost themselves inwardly through excess. The message is clear: remain anchored in the practices that brought you here, continue to honor your higher calling, and avoid being lured into shallow indulgence disguised as success. The true key is alignment. Resources, recognition, and opportunities are not meant to distract you but to expand your mission. The guidance insists on discernment, choosing carefully who you share your victories with, staying rooted in your spiritual foundation, and ensuring that every new door you walk through adds to the legacy of growth rather than pulling you away from it. This balance is what ensures your rise strengthens you, instead of consuming you. Not every person around you will be able to celebrate your rise without projecting their own insecurities onto it. Some may smile outwardly yet carry hidden discomfort, their unresolved struggles with recognition and wealth stirred by the reflection of your progress. Even allies who once stood firmly beside you may reveal unexpected reactions when your elevation becomes too undeniable to ignore. The path ahead comes with natural shifts. Connections that once felt aligned may fade quietly, not out of betrayal but because priorities no longer match. You'll be stepping into spaces where your vision expands beyond what old bonds can hold, and with this expansion comes attention, both admiring and critical. The spotlight is not always gentle, and you are being prepared for that reality. There will be those who dissect your choices, searching for weakness to point at, weaving elaborate stories to question your legitimacy. Unlike your detractor, who crumbled under the smallest taste of scrutiny, you are being fortified for this attention. What overwhelmed them will not shake you, because you're learning resilience at a soul-deep level. Your armor is being forged through every test you've endured. Emotional steadiness, spiritual clarity, and strong boundaries are now part of your foundation. The unfolding events, the breaking of unhealthy ties, the exposure of deceit, the surge of opportunities, were never random. They were coordinated to prepare you for the responsibility that comes with wider reach and greater influence. It was necessary for you to be released from the drain of unhealthy dynamics before stepping into this new season. Ironically, the very person who tried to sabotage you has been one of your most devoted observers. Their obsession has tracked your growth more diligently than many of your supporters ever could. In doing so, they inadvertently revealed your strongest traits. They showed you which of your qualities ignited jealousy, which accomplishments rattled fragile egos, and which parts of your success others could not digest. And without realizing it, you were growing stronger each time they aimed at you. Every fabrication that unraveled enhanced your reliability. Every false charge that collapsed reinforced your integrity. Every attempt to block opportunities redirected you toward better ones. Their negativity could never attach to you. It only rebounded, returning to them magnified. That is why their foundation is collapsing while yours expands, why their world is shrinking while yours multiplies in depth and light.